Yeah, I think there's a good sounding board for our players about kind of, what this game's about, what it means, what they're going to go through, especially leading up to the game. That's probably the biggest thing, leading up to the game and how to handle it. It's always helps when you got guys teaching young people that have experience in that, in that moment, in those situations. So I think that helps a lot.
What's happening? Yes, welcome back or welcome to Y Option. I am your host, Yogi Roth. Week 2 is in the books. Week 3 is on the way, and it's rivalry week. Yeah, how about that? We're talking about the Pac-12 conference. It's still here. I think it's the only undefeated power conference in that regard. Washington State took care of business. We'll talk about that against Texas Tech. They play in the Apple Cup against UW at Lumen Field, which is where the Seahawks play in Seattle. And Oregon State, they host the Oregon Ducks in what was formerly known as the Civil War in Corvallis in what will be a bonkers Research Stadium. So we got Trent Bray on the podcast today. But before we get to the interview with Oregon State's first-year head man, Jim Thornby, co-founder and executive producer of Y Option. How are you, my man? How we living?
I'm doing good, yeah, and we'll kind of get more into the those matchups more in the one later this week. This is more the looking back at the weekend, and to your point, yeah, Pac-12 4-0, only conference that's undefeated. It was two nice wins there. I mean, Washington State, in the battle of the two Mike Leach alumni teams. John Mateer, who was our 5-star QB of the week, the 119th QB, according to the 247 composite in the class of 2022. Just going out there balling. The week before, he had 5 touchdown passes. This week, he had 197 on the ground, the most ever by a Washington State quarterback. It was great. And the funny thing is, like, they won by 21 points, even though they got outgained by almost 100 yards. They were 3 of 13 on third downs. The defense forced 4 turnovers. So, like, even in a game where they win by 3 scores against a Power 5 team, still lots of room for improvement there. I mean, so I think that's actually a promising thing to know that, like, there's that, there's that angle there. And then with Oregon State, I mean, the defense was just, suffocating down San Diego State. They continue to just Oregon State continues to just pound the ball, to what we've been used to them, and they're the number 1 team in the country in time of possession. So it's a nice start for those 2 schools.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what you think of when you think of their identities and their head coaches and their track records, right? Trent Bray, we'll get into that conversation here in a few minutes. We had him on as our guest today at the Y Option podcast. I think for Jake Dickert and company, I love what he said after the game, because a year ago, who knows what he might have said, right? A year ago, and he has referenced this, like, he made it such a big deal for them in terms of conference realignment. We all know the reality. We all know that it's a big deal. And he said after the game, like, Washington State's done this hundreds, if not thousands of times, beat another big-time program in college football, and they are a big-time program in college football. So we'll continue to champion that, and I'm glad that other people are coming to the party around America's plural teams. I just think that after your favorite team, whoever that may be, how do you not cheer for these 2 schools based on everything that they have been dealt with? And now they get their biggest stage probably of the season, right? Until maybe they play each other pending their records.
Ready, set. Use French fries to go. Yeah, oil from French fries. Turn yesterday's leftovers into today's fuel. More power, lower emissions. 76 renewable diesel fuels all the ways you go, go, go.
Trent Bray, the first-year head coach of Oregon State. He played at Oregon State. He's been an assistant at Oregon State. Now he's the head coach at the place he loves so much. It's also his 14th time being a part of this rivalry game. Have known Trent Bray since he was a player. See that helmet right there? Rock that helmet when we played against each other in the Insight Bowl in 2002. You guys probably haven't watched that game, and not recommending it, especially if you're a Beavs fan. You know what happened that day, but It was a monumental day for the Panthers, but more importantly, it's going to be a monumental weekend for the Beavs. So today, our conversation with Trent Bray, presented by our founding partner, 76 is your head coach at Oregon State in advance of his first game as the head coach against the rival, the Oregon Ducks. Coach, it is rivalry week in September. How about that? Never thought we'd say that. You have been around this rivalry for many, many times. I believe this is your 14th time going up against Oregon as a player, as an assistant, your first time as a head coach. What is this week like for you based on the totality of all of your experiences?
It's a little different doing it this time of year, like you said, but I mean, it's a great rivalry. There'll be lots of energy. It's important to the state, so it'll be a fun game.
Your first game, first time seeing this rivalry, being a part of it. Do you remember what it was like? And are you sharing it with some of the players that are going to experience this for the first time this weekend?
Haven't had a chance to talk to them about the game yet. That'll be tomorrow. But yeah, it's just the biggest thing is the atmosphere. It's just like nothing I've ever been around and a part of. So it's just a fun and being able to manage your emotions through all that kind of chaos that's going on around you.
How do you try to create that during the week? Or do you ask them to simulate that? Or will you ask them to simulate that, whether it's visualization at night or showing clips from the past? Or do you try not to make it too big of a deal?
Yeah, you try not to make it too big of a deal because at the end of the day, it's about you executing and you going out there and doing your responsibility, and understanding that this game, once you start playing, it's no different than any other game. You just got to manage all the stuff around it.
How is it like, and what is it like to be you right now as the head coach of this team?
It's been good. I mean, I like the way we're playing, getting better every week. I thought there was a lot of improvement last week, and then I like the way they play. So that's the biggest thing is the style of play that we've been able to use in our identity. I enjoy watching.
When you were named head coach, I know you had a vision for how this thing would play out, but until you get to camp, you can't really tell like what your team might be. From an identity standpoint, is it too early to figure it out and to give it a label of sorts? Or are you able to say, this is who we are, these are our strengths, this is what we want to lean on?
It's a little early, but I like the initial identity. I think when you talk about having to win games in the fourth quarter and close things out, our ability to run the football and control the game and then defensively get off the field and make plays. I like where we're at right now.
Okay, 3 running backs you're playing at times. Take us through that room that has a lot of experience on one hand and then a youngster on the other.
Yeah, just really talented room. I mean, Jam and Hank have played a lot of football, and they're tremendous backs. They're strong. They're tough. They can block. They can catch the ball in the backfield. And then you got the young guy who's probably athletically probably the best guy or one of the best guys on our team. And so he's fun to watch, and he has 2 great mentors in front of him to learn from as well.
You know a thing or two about being an underdog. I look at one of your receivers and I just lean into Trent Walker and I'm just like, he was definitely way better than me, coach, but there's definitely a lot of things you're like, I can imagine playing for the Beavs right now and being him. What has he brought to this program?
He's just a guy that's self-made. He's worked his way into earning a scholarship, worked his way into being a starter, to being one of our best, offensive players. And it's just a great example of a guy that came here, believed in himself, and worked extremely hard to get to where he's at.
There's some new elements in college football this year. How have you guys dealt, whether it's with iPads or the communication? And is it something that it feels second nature now, or is it still something that you're getting accustomed to in game as the head coach?
No, we worked at all fall camp. So it's pretty, our coaches do a good job on the sideline. They've come just accustomed to every time we come off, looking at the plays, getting with the players. So it's been an easy transition.
Okay, so let's talk about the transition then for you as a head coach. Your first win, like your second win. Have you taken a minute to be like, this is pretty cool. Like, let's put that game ball up on the mantle behind me in that big corner office you have now. Or do you go right back to the office and get right back into the next game?
You get right back into it because, as you win your first one, but then you got to travel to San Diego State the next week, which isn't easy. And then you beat San Diego State down there, and now you got to play Oregon. So there's really no time to relax till probably after the year.
I love the phrase, welcome to the fight. It feels like you guys have always welcomed and embraced, whether competitive moments, underdog moments, even when you've been favored moments. How has that phrase, the fight, resonated with this year's team?
I think it kind of exemplifies our identity. Go out there and just we make it physical, and we're going to do scratch, claw, do whatever it takes to find a way to win and find a way to get make the plays we need to make.
We all know what's going on in college football and specifically to you guys in Washington State. Is that still part of the dialogue with your team? And if so, how do you navigate that or not? And how do you navigate that as the head coach, probably constantly being asked that question around conference realignment?
As far as the team, it's not dialogue at all, and hasn't really been. They've known the goal, and the goal's to be where you want to be at the end of the year, no matter what conference or anything that you're in. And so that's been their focus. That's more fans and media and stuff I got to deal with, but our team's been focused on what's going on.
Yeah, I think that happens all across college football, where we think that the players think like we think, whether it's in the media or the fan base, but not nearly at all. And I think in this case, it's like, wow, really, that's amazing. Can you shed a little bit more light on your team's focus and how they've been able to be connected to the present moment and the respective game that's up next on the schedule?
Yeah, to me, I guess it just doesn't seem very tough, and I don't think they've, it's about finding the best version of yourself, and if you focus on those things every single day, then you'll be where you want to be at the end of it. And so that's been the team's focus. They've done a great job of staying focused on what's important.
Not only have you been a part of this rivalry, but both your coordinators have been a part of this rivalry. How are you utilizing your staff's experience to either share stories or to illuminate the players on the roster about what to expect once this thing kicks off on Saturday?
Yeah, I think there's a good sounding board for our players about kind of, what this game's about, what it means, what they're going to go through, especially leading up to the game. That's probably the biggest thing, leading up to the game and how to handle it. It always helps when you got guys teaching young people that have experience in that, in that moment, in those situations. So I think that helps a lot.
Okay, so let's talk about QB1. He's going to be the huge focus. You've played two throughout this season, but how has Giovanni McCoy displayed his talents to you through the first two games of the season? And what does he need to do Saturday to get a win against Oregon?
Yeah, he's done everything we've asked him to do. He's managed the game. He's made the throws for the most part that we've asked him to make and needed him to make. And then he got better from game one to game two. There's still some more out there, but I like where he's going. And as he feels more comfortable in the offense, he's only going to get better and better. So I'm very excited. And he's going to have to do the same thing against Oregon, manage the game, and then hit the throws we need him to hit when it's time to do that.
When you look at the Ducks' first two games, what are some things that stand out to you that you need to make sure are addressed in all phases of the game?
Well, one, we have to be extremely assignment sound and detailed and disciplined, because they're one of the most talented teams in the country. There's no question about that from a roster talent standpoint. So we have to be right with good leverage, with good technique, so we have a chance to be successful. That's probably the biggest thing, is the overall talent that they have at every position.
I know you're busy in the front part of this week, but will there be a time where you call your dad, a guy who knows the game as well as anybody, and say, hey, what do you think about this game against the Ducks in the rivalry?
Probably not anymore, because he'll tell me, what I don't want to hear. And so, yeah, it's just best I leave it alone.
Yeah. He'll tell you anyway when the game ends.
Exactly.
I'd imagine, like all parents probably do. I think it's a unique time in college football in terms of you have your rivalry game this weekend, as does Washington State in the Apple Cup. Have you probably, I don't know if you have any time, but just kind of looking at those two games and where they sit on the calendar, have any time to connect in with Washington State or Coach Dicker at all regarding the upcoming game for them?
I haven't. I've checked in on how they're doing, and obviously they had another good win last week, which is great to see. And I've got experience in both those games, right? My dad being a Washington State coach forever, been to many Apple Cups, so it'll be interesting to do it week 3, but I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes as well.
Coach, I think they usually let the fans in Reeser about 2 hours before the game. Like, is there any world where you and Scott Barnes say, hey, let them in like 4 or 5 hours before the game? Because I got to imagine that tickets are at a premium right now if you are in Corvallis.
Yeah, I mean, he can let them in whenever he wants. We don't get there till 2 hours before the game anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I love it, man. I called one of those games in Reeser years ago, and it's the only experience in person with that game. But even as a broadcaster, it's such an honor to be there and be a part of it. I want to wish you the absolute best of luck this Saturday, man. I know you'll soak it in, and good luck. And maybe you'll get another game ball because you deserve it if you go get this one, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, Trent Bray, thanks for the time.
No problem.
It's the Afterglow. That was Trent Bray, one of the head coaches of America's teams. That's right. We're saying it. Oregon State and Washington State, we think are America's teams after whoever it is that you love the most, and probably a little bit too much, but that's college football. So Jim Thornby joins me here, as well as we do every single post podcast presented by our founding partner 76. Thank you 76 for all the love, as well as the Go 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 awards. You can check them out at yoption.com, also presented by our founding partner 76. So Jim, takeaways from Trent Bray, the head coach in advance of his first game as the head coach and the leader of this team against the Ducks.
Well, it's funny because he definitely is in coach mode this week. It's not time for reflection on his. He's not at that point where he's ready to talk about like, oh yeah, when I was a player, he's dialed in. Yeah, it'll be good to see that game, and the Apple Cup game will be going on at the same time on Saturday. So the two fan bases will not necessarily get to boost each other's ratings by watching each other, but they'll have to do them at the same time, or those people that are at the games will have to watch those games after the fact. But it's welcome to the fight. It's going to be two very passionate actually, look back there. It'll be four very passionate fan base. So let's not discount the Oregon and Washington fans here, just because they've moved on to another conference. They're definitely going to want to put their mark on this. But with Trent, it was good. Like he knows this rivalry as good as just about anybody. I mean, you put like him, Mike Riley, and maybe the broadcast booth, on the radio. Like beyond that, it's tough to get people. Our SIDs, Sean Scheffler and Hank Hager, like they've been there for a long time. You're not going to get a whole lot of people that know these games as well as he do. And I get it. He's he doesn't want to go there this week, but he'll have those guys ready.
So earlier this week, I went on every Monday I go on Big Ten Network, and we kind of do a round robin around all the games, recap of the games. And of course, they asked me about this one, and I referenced calling USC in Corvallis. And to this day, maybe I won't say that this weekend because I'm going to Nebraska, but it's the loudest game I've ever had to broadcast in. I don't know how it got so loud because half the stadium wasn't there, but it was insane. And it was basically the send-off because it was the last time they were ever going to play SC. They had them, they had every opportunity to win that game. And Caleb does his magic, Jordan Addison, and the Trojans win, and away we go.
And half the stadium not there because of the construction, not because
exactly
not because of the fans.
Yeah, they would have climbed it. They would have crawled it. They would have found a spot.
They would have put hard hats on and sat anywhere you
right.
would have said it was okay.
So to that point, now the stadium is done. I haven't been there for a game since it's been done, but I've heard that it's even louder than that. I got to imagine that even the Oregon fans who have tickets, they are going to put them as far up into the top deck as humanly possible for good reason, right? We know what this rivalry is. This isn't going to be like 50-50. This is not Georgia and Florida. Like that. This is not Texas and OU. Like that's not how this rivalry works. It's a home game. It's a home game. So I'm just jacked for it because there's so much intrigue on both sides, right? For Oregon State, they lead the nation in time of possession. They want to run the football. They want to control the clock. They want to limit explosive plays. Does that work against this team? And if they get behind, can they create explosive plays? They haven't had to do that this season. They haven't been in that situation. And then for Oregon, this is a team by many people, including me, predicted to make a lot of noise in the college football playoff. I still think they've got all the capability to do that. They haven't proven to be one of the top three teams in America this season, right? I think that would go to a version of Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, whatever order you want to go in. I don't care. But those three are monsters right now. So how do the Ducks handle this environment? First time they go on the road. If things are challenging for them, like they had been at home in their first 2 weeks, how do they navigate it? I go to the DNA traits of Dan Lanning: connection, growth, toughness, and sacrifice. They're going to need all of those things in this environment because it won't be perfect. That's just the nature of this game. So I'm curious, right? Both starting quarterbacks weren't even at this school. a year ago. They have no idea what this rivalry actually is. There's a lot of layers to this game. Of course, we all know what happened last time Oregon went to Research Stadium. They ended up on the other side of a victory, and Oregon State ran the football and won the physicality at the line of scrimmage in the latter part of that game. So what is it going to be like? I can't wait. I could see this thing going in a variety of ways. I could see Oregon rolling. I could see the Beavs hanging and beating them. I hope it's a classic because the teams deserve that. The game deserves that. And then just in college football, with all the realignment talk, we all know it to be. And Trent Bray just referenced, like, the players don't really talk about it. I believe that. I bet they don't really talk about it. But it's fourth quarter and it's late and the chainsaw's going. They'll think about it. And I'm just curious. Like, this is one I will be glued to every snap. I'll have dueling screens, Jim, much like you, as the rivalries continue. So
it'll be a fun weekend for sure.
It'll be a fun weekend. It's been a fun week in week 3, rivalry week with our special guest. I hope you enjoyed Trent Bray. To all the Beavs out there, thank you for all your support. You sent so many personal notes to either Jim or myself or us on social media. It means a lot. We meant it when we said it. This is college football through the lens of the West Coast. We try to represent every school on the West Coast with authenticity and also not afraid to have an opinion. And I think that's a really important part of this thing. So how week 3 shakes out is anybody's guess. But today was a great day because Trent Bray took time out of his busy schedule to jump on this show. So thank you to Jim, executive producer, man. Lots of love, co-founder of Y Option. Of course, 76, our founding partner. Trent Bray and everybody at Oregon State, Sean Scheffler and company. Thanks for making it happen. And stay safe. And we'll be back later on in the week. I think we got another guest you might be interested in if you're a fan of one of 2 of America's teams. Peace.